That's right. The Into the Flow podcast starts right now. Hey, everybody, it's Gabe from Gabe's Spotless Window Cleaning with the Into the Flow podcast. And we have a local favorite here, Mr. Anthony Padlo. We're so happy to have him on. He's one of the original people who was part of the Into the Flow group when we first started it. And he's also been a mod for a period of time. He's someone who contributes quite a bit and is very helpful in the group. And we appreciate you taking your time to meet with us, Anthony. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Gabe. Thanks for having me.
So you are out of Indiana, right? So you got to Northwest Indiana and DeMont, Indiana, correct?
Correct.
And it's Wonder Window Cleaners is your company. So we're glad to see that you're hanging in there. And I know this has been a tough time for all of us here with the COVID situation. So glad you're still trucking. And it seems like you're starting to gain a little bit of steam, right?
We are treading water, and I got to be honest with you, it's a better year than I think anyone anticipated with what's happening. So right now we're just kind of we're pushing forward until we can't move anymore, I guess.
Yeah, that's the way to go, right? That's what we all got to do, right? Just keep going, just keep pushing, finding our spot.
Exactly.
The reason why I wanted to interview you, Anthony, is because you've got a really unique path to where you're at now. You know, you guys are owners of your own business, you and your wife, but you worked for other companies. So you've actually you're not just like a brand new window cleaner who started. You've got what, like 20 years experience? Is that true? Or
Yes.
so?
Yes.
So you know how to clean windows. So you're bringing a skill set to a business. What your challenge now is learning how to make the business viable, right? And how to you can get it
Exactly.
to support you. So that's
As
why I
far
wanted. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, as far as the technical work, I've got a PhD. We're good to go there. It's the administrative stuff we're learning now.
Exactly. So I thought you could really bring your unique viewpoint to help some of our small business owners that we have here in the group, and perhaps even just share some experiences that might help teach other owners a lesson. I know for sure I'm looking to learn a few things myself. But so let's just start from the beginning, though. How did you first start getting into the window business?
It was it was one of those things where it was almost for the wrong reasons. It was money. I was an 18-year-old kid. To be quite honest with you, I was a bit of a troublemaker when I was younger. Not like I have a rap sheet or anything like that, but I
Right.
was not easy to work with. Let's just put it that way.
Sure.
And by the time I had reached that point in my life, I had already went through, a couple fast food places, a department store,
Mm-hmm.
a framing job, working at a marina. Just the list goes on. I
Sure.
had not found something at that point that either interested me or something that I felt I could actually do and do successfully.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was dating a girl at the time who had started with this company called Fish Window Cleaning. I think we've all
Mm-hmm.
heard of them.
Yeah, I think we've heard of them.
In this area. Yeah, we know the name, the red shirts. So she had started working for this company, had been there for a few months. It was working well. I started seeing her paychecks, and I was like, I like money, so let's maybe talk about getting me in there. And then it just kind of stuck. This was a job, I was a kid when I took it. Didn't really think much of it, and it was just going to be the thing until the next thing came.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am. I'm going to be turning 38 very soon, still doing that same thing. So
Yeah.
I really did fall in love with it, and a lot of it has to do with the people I was taught by. My mentor in the business is the gentleman that owned that fish franchise. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's taught me a lot, and I've had other mentors along the way.
Yeah. And just real quick, I think we want to touch on something. Fish gets a bad rap because, they are a franchise and they're well known and they're everywhere. And, it's like anything. If you got a bad manager, it reflects poorly on the company. And I think
Absolutely.
in the window cleaning community, fish is an easy target. It's easy for people to just kind of
Correct.
rag on them. But like you said, when you get a good manager in the position, they run it especially if they're a window cleaner themselves, they run it well. And I personally know a
Exactly.
few owners of fish franchises who do a great job. So I just want to make sure that we get that out there, that there are some real
Oh,
good
absolutely.
business owners, who just it's a franchise model and that's the way they've chosen to run their business, but it's their business. The fish is just
Exactly.
a name on that. So you
The name
benefited. Oh,
recognition kind of works against them in that regard. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Because if I do a terrible job up here in Indiana, nobody's gonna, you know, they're not gonna put that on Gabe Spotless down in Tucson. You know what I mean? There's
Exactly.
no connection. But if we were both fish owners, that's how that kind of starts happening. But
Yes,
yeah, I
exactly.
worked for one of the high cost leaders in our area.
Hmm.
I learned that, premium dollar, premium quality from a fish, which I know is
Hmm.
kind of counterintuitive from what many of the stories are, but I can vouch for the fact that it's all up to the individual owner.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely, absolutely. So, you started with them. Like, how fast did you feel like you started learning and became a competent cleaner?
That took a while. I would say I could function within a few months,
Hmm.
but it really doesn't click. And you and Kevin were talking about pole work not too long ago. That's the part I struggled with the most. But once that clicked, obviously Fish's predominant service is route work, so it's very important to get good with that. And we're talking, gosh, I didn't even have a GPS in my truck. It was all street guides at the time.
Oh, me too,
So
man.
there was a waterford pole existed, and it was expensive and not really known at the time. So it was the backflip and the younger pole. That was
Yeah,
how I started
yeah,
it.
yeah. I
To
just
this
it's
day,
funny
I'm still.
you mentioned the GPS. I didn't have a GPS even when it was
Mhm.
became popular. I had the Phoenix map or the Rand McNally map, and it was the book that you turned and you looked at. Oh, this street is on page such and such, and you turn to it, and it's in this section, and you
Mhm.
find it, and then that's how you get to it. You just follow it and go. And it was just because that's how I had always done things. And I
Sure.
don't remember what it was that finally got me to go actually buy. And I had to buy a separate GPS, one that
Mhm.
mounted onto the windshield that I could
Yeah.
follow. It was, we didn't have them in our phones yet either when I finally got one. And I was just like, man, why didn't I do this earlier? This is like the best thing in the whole world. And now all these, young guys, they don't even, they can't even get to one side of the street to the other without a GPS. They're so used to,
It's true. It's
relying on
true.
it. So it's just really amazing how far small business has come, in particular window cleaning, when it comes to that. So I'm right there with you, man. I was right there with the books, with the book maps. And so or if I would forget the map, I'd have to stop into a Walgreens and buy one of those big old paper sheet maps and open
Yes.
it up like this and sit there and then plot it and then fold it up so that that's what's showing to the route that I needed to go was showing. It's funny how.
Hazard signs off on the side of the road so you can. Oh wait a minute.
Yep.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how long did you stay with Fish?
I was there for about 6 years.
6 years. Okay. And
Mhm.
did you feel like you moved up at a pretty steady pace? Like, did you become a manager or a lead or a tech or
At
what?
that time, I did not become a quote unquote manager. I wasn't responsible for much beyond. I did start getting into training.
Okay.
And so I started basically kind of like you, my boss at that time, residential was what you move up to.
Hmm.
And I got to the point where, I became a good producer in the commercial side of things. I kind of became known for having decent quality. So I went to the residential and I kind of got to the top of the boards there as well. That's where I really kind of took to window cleaning like a fish to water was the actual
Gotcha.
residential service.
Gotcha.
Um,
Once you hit
so
residential, you're like, hey, I like this, right?
this is my comfort zone. I like this. A few jobs at most a day, one or two big ones. Knock it out of the park. Be on your merry way. A lot
Right.
better than stopping at 30 different little strip malls throughout the day and fighting traffic, all that fun stuff. So
Right.
yeah, but anyway, I started there, and by the time I was exiting Fish, I had become the residential guy and the training manager. So
Hmm.
that's were the two things I was responsible for. And yeah, so that was the start of it all.
Yeah. So what led to you leaving Fish? Were you unhappy there, or did you kind of hit a ceiling, or what?
Um, a little bit from A, a little bit from B. To be quite honest, that relationship I had mentioned to you, this girl that I was dating at the time, that as young relationships tend to do,
Yeah, they have an
went
expiration
south.
date.
Exactly. Now it was that point where she and I were both kind of integral to the company, and my owner he didn't really want to necessarily let me go, but it was not the most amicable breakup. I have to admit it. Time has kind of fixed that, and I think everyone involved is a lot more adult now. But back then, it was, hey, you know what? I just bought a franchise in Indianapolis. You should move down there and kind of do that, and she'll stay up here and keep doing what she's doing. So that was kind of how I left, and unfortunately, it didn't work out as anybody had planned. That franchise didn't last long,
Mm,
and I had found other places to work. Namely, I did high rises for a very brief time.
mm,
Worked for a company called Hoosier State Window Cleaning out there.
okay.
Got to do some cool sights from that. Definitely.
Hmm.
Um, got to see the old Colts Stadium
Oh, nice.
inflated, and yeah, that was kind of fun to watch from above.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so that was pretty much that. Then the journey with Window Genie started in Indianapolis.
Okay. And so how long total were you with Window Genie?
The one in Indianapolis, about a year and a half, two
Oh,
years.
okay.
We had moved back up here, and
Gotcha.
that's when the owner, Scott, another great guy who taught me a lot. I'm fortunate to have all these people that I've crossed paths with that have given me a little bit more growth each stop.
Sure.
But it was a brief one in Indianapolis. We wanted to be back home. At that point, I had got with my wife. We are married now. We have a daughter, and we want to get back to family. So
Sure.
a lot kind of happened in those few years. It's very transitional,
Hmm.
and I almost felt like I was spiraling a little bit after leaving Fish because I went from this stable job to
Sure.
okay, I've got a few months of high rise, a year and a half with this company. What's happening? I'm gonna get back to this kind of stability.
Hmm.
So we came back home, and I had kind of talked with the owner of the Window Genie out in this area. He didn't have room for me at the time. He was still pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started kind of taking on a few jobs of my own here and there. He would call me for a job if he was kind of overflowing a little bit, and just kind of a small start to things. So
So what year was that when you were kind of still
that was
between
about '09, I want to
oh
say.
nine? Okay. So were you contemplating starting your own business at that time then when you were kind of free?
When we came up here, the full intention was just to take another job. I
Right.
started taking on work by myself just because I needed money. We were new parents, was living at my mom's house from moving back up from Indianapolis.
Hmm.
Wanted to fix that as quickly as I could. I wasn't really, nobody was really happy about that. We wanted to get
Right.
back on it.
Sure.
So, you know, I took the steady thing, which the first steady thing that came to me was a temporary job over the winter at a factory, and we made
Hmm.
a car dashboard installation.
Hmm.
So that was fun for a brief time, and then around the next spring in 2010, my the owner of the Porter County Window Genie said to me, "Come on in. I've got a room for you." So I became his lead technician there.
Okay.
So started working there and advanced through the company for about 10 years.
Okay. So then at that Window Genie you were there for 10 years.
Hmm.
Okay, very good. Now let me ask you. Uh, I'm curious because as a business owner myself, and I hire employees, and there's a fine line, that you have to walk because you obviously, it's great if you can get someone with experience, because then it's less training. But with the experience comes the I don't want to say bad habits because they're not always bad. They're just different. Um, but I find that there's a lot of window cleaners that when they don't own their own business, is they're kind of almost like floaters. They're just kind of, they go from one place to another to another to another,
Hmm.
and they never want to own their own business, either because they don't feel like they can be a businessman, or they feel like they don't want the headaches. They just want to work for someone and collect a paycheck. Um, but I found that they never kind of feel settled. They never kind of feel like they're ready to kind of settle into a position. How did you feel when you were kind of during that period where you were hopping around? Did you feel like you wanted to be settled? Because I almost get the impression with some of these guys that come through is that they don't want to be settled. I try to set up as much of a good situation for them as possible, and but if they're experienced, if they've been in the game for 5-10 years, it's almost like they're just nomads, and they're, no matter how nice you make it for them, they're not going to stay. They're going to eventually leave.
You make a good point, and I definitely felt that when you say the issue of settled, exactly kind of how I felt. Like I said, I went from decent long-term job security to all right, now I need to find my footing again,
Mm-hmm.
and I did find it with the Window Genie here in Northwest Indiana for a while, um, but I think it took a while for that seed to really start to bloom within me as far as actually owning my own business.
Mm-hmm.
I was content working for other people because I didn't want the burden, so to speak, of, you know, heavy hangs the crown. You know, when
Sure.
you've got a lot more on your plate, especially you as someone with employees,
Mm-hmm.
than I did at that time as just a guy who comes in and cleans windows and
Mm-hmm.
produces for this guy, and then I train a few people for that guy, and then it there was definitely less pressure. But you know, as I aged, I started realizing that there's really not a long-term future with that. You know, I could have stayed another 30 years and still really been in the same spot. So it was time to grow personally.
Mm-hmm.
And after that was done, it was time to try to get this company going.
Gotcha. So you what helped you to decide to finally make the leap? You know, because you had mentioned, you know, you had other opportunities where you might have been able to say, hey, this is a time to start. You know, but now at this new juncture that you're in right now, starting Wonder Window Cleaners, what was finally the catalyst that got you to say, hey, this is the best time for me to try and make this work?
To be quite honest with you, it was getting into these networking groups,
Oh.
specifically into the flow.
Mm-hmm.
That gave me a lot more encouragement that I just did not have before. Now, it became one of those things. By the time I was at the end of my relationship with Window Genie up here, I had done a lot. I had gotten into sales. Turns out I'm not terrible at it. I was managing the crews. I was the operations manager. I did the sales. I helped schedule, and my wife was actually the office manager by that point. She came to Window Genie, and
Hmm.
she's been 7 years about now, I think, in the industry. Started as a tech, but she was doing the scheduling, and I started getting more hands on with some of that stuff that, you know, seemed mystifying to me before. And the next thing was just the confidence. I did not have the confidence. I've always, you know, some people are their own worst critics, and I'm definitely, you know, I'm my number one heckler, is the way I like to put it. So that took a lot. That was a lot to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of guys, you and Troy Glandon actually is one that really kind of, he just looked at me and said, you know, you're going to kill it if you start for yourself. Why aren't you doing it? I don't get it. And, you know, I got more and more people kind of saying these things. And I kind of had to just look at it and say, okay, on paper, I guess I'm not bad at this stuff. I guess I can do it. So I just kind of had to tell myself to shut up and,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, kind of take the leap.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's how it started.
Awesome. So you took the leap. So what were the biggest challenges that you faced?
Um, Definitely being unprepared. It's well, you're a retro gamer, so maybe you'll kind of understand this. You know, sometimes when you play a game and you master that game, and then you unlock a secret new playable character who plays just a little bit different than the main character. So you might know the game, you might know the levels, but you're using this different character who controls a little differently,
Mm-hmm.
and there's definitely an adjustment there and a learning curve. That's what struck me as odd or challenging, was how much of it felt unfamiliar to me. And
Mm-hmm.
really, the only thing that had changed was the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, being in a different set of shoes was a challenge, and obviously getting out there, getting noticed by anyone. That's definitely the biggest hurdle.
Yeah. What would you say you learned from that particular experience of going, like you said, for changing from one player to another? Because you were going from a manager, right, and a trainer, and you had a lot of responsibility, and you had techs that were answering to you. Now to an owner, which, like you said, it seems like it wouldn't be that big of a jump, but it really is. So, what were some adjustments that you immediately had to make?
Well, I had to kind of calm myself down, realize that, you know, this was not completely foreign to me, no matter how it felt. I needed to kind of prioritize how I wanted to start this. And it took my wife sitting down and kind of realizing that this is going to be scary for a little bit, but we just kind of committed to it. We said, you know what, we're not going to give up, and we're going to get to where we need to be.
Yeah.
I think a couple weeks after we had started, and, you know, at that point where you're not getting any phone calls and you're wondering, you know, how this is going to go, we actually got a call from a customer, a long-term customer. One of the greatest things about this business is the relationships. And I've worn 3 different colored shirts working for this same customer. So she had found out we'd started up, and you know, so she became kind of our biggest mouthpiece at the time. You know, we've gotten a few jobs from her, And then you know how it goes. You do good work for people. You're honest. You do what you say what you mean, and people take notice. So
Yes.
once it actually started, I think once we got to the end of our first month and just the reaction from the few
Hmm.
customers that we did have,
Yeah.
that really kind of made me think, yeah, this is going to work out.
That's awesome. I think you hit on something really important, Anthony, and that's something that in my talking with other new business owners, is you have to make a commitment to it.
Hmm.
If you start a business and you've got one toe in the business and then one toe in something else because you're not sure it's going to work, you will always struggle. You will always
Absolutely.
struggle because customers smell when you're not committed to something. If you've got uncertainty, if you've got doubt, they smell that a mile away. And it
Mhm.
comes across in from your advertising, it comes across from your conversations on the phone, it comes across in your work. And if I've talked to some people who have started their business, and I ask them, well, what's your goals 5 years from now? And they don't have goals. They're just like,
Right.
I don't know. I'm just trying to survive right now. It's like, no, if you're committed, you've got to have benchmarks that you want to hit.
Absolutely.
In a year, I want to be able to have this much work so that I'm not so uncertain in the slow season. Or I want to be able to have an actual work vehicle instead of just working out of a truck that doesn't have any lettering on it. um,
Right.
there's got to be some type of goals and commitment. You've got to see yourself doing this for years ahead.
Hmm.
Because if you've just saying, well, I'll try this for a little bit, if it works, great. If it doesn't, yeah, that's almost a certain recipe. It's not going to work out.
Yeah.
You've
If you
got to
have
have.
exactly, if you have a backup plan formulated, you're not giving your full attention to the plan.
Yeah,
You're going to need it basically. So
yeah.
yeah, definitely jump in.
One of the guys I was talking to, I told him, if you're going to do this, you have to be willing to lose money on it. You've
Mhm.
got to say, okay, I've got $2,000 invested in this money and for marketing. I may lose that, and I got to be okay with that. That's the chance. That's the price I'm going to pay for the opportunity to have my own business. And if I lose it, I lose it.
Mhm.
You know, and I think too many people wrap up their identity in, well, if I lose this money, well, then that means I'm a failure, and it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. But what it means is that you are committed to something. You tried it, and if that's the end, then that's the end. But you tried it. If you're half in, half out, you pretty much have already decided that it's not going to be a successful endeavor. You have to be willing
Exactly.
to have that commitment to see it through. So, that's one thing I noticed right away with you. When you started, even though there was a lot of things that you had to learn, and we talked a lot when you first started, I knew right away you were going to do well because you had that commitment. One, you had the experience, which you were already up on a lot of people who started a new window cleaning business, but you were like, I want to make this work. This has to work.
Mhm.
And I saw that right away, and I was like, you know what? Whatever this guy has to go through, he's going to make it because he's already got that commitment there. You're going to see it through. So that's really good, I think, advice that you can give to anybody who starts a new business is just be committed to it. Just
Right.
just see it through. Not all businesses are going to survive, but that's okay. See it through, and I think you're a good example for new business owners to be able to look to for that part of the starting the business. Um, so you started the business, and then I know you've had some ups and downs. So what were some challenges in kind of managing those expectations that you might have had, the unfamiliarity of not having a full work schedule all the time, when you're used to
Mhm.
having it? What were some of your experiences in going through that?
Well, frankly, there was a little bit of I need to just get over myself a little bit. To boil it down, I had to kind of humble myself, and this has been a test of my patience as well. As you mentioned, I'm used to the fuller work schedule. I'm used to being the company that's in demand, and so when you're starting new, obviously that's not going to be the case. So that knowledge of, well, the work is out there, they're just not coming to me, that was almost immediate frustration for me. So it took a moment to just kind of remind myself that this is the perfect time to work on the psychology of service. And that's kind of one of the biggest things about our business is we are not going to be the guys that follow something like what the mastermind groups would lay out. That's not my wife and I. We've already kind of made it pretty clear to ourselves that we own a business. That doesn't necessarily mean we are entrepreneurs. We're window cleaners. And so we kind of recommitted to that, and we decided, you know what, for every customer we get, we're going to knock it out of the park every single time. They're going to love us. They're going to say, wow, that's the whole point of the see the wonderful world. Come see what we can do for you.
Hmm.
And, we decided that we're going to double down on the low and slow growth, that those customers we get, they're going to be for us for a long time. And that's how we approach.
Awesome. That's a really good approach to take. Um, so let me ask you, Anthony, how, and I think this is something that a lot of new owners need to kind of deal with, especially ones who may come from a secular job where they've got the 9 to 5, they've got the paycheck every week, it's the same amount. They can make a budget, you know, they can have their insurance taken out of their check before they even see it. They have their rent payment already scheduled. And now you're in a business where some weeks you may make double what you did at your old job, and then other weeks, you're hoping that there's still another spaghetti can in the cabin that you forgot about.
Yeah.
So how did you find yourself dealing with that uncertainty of the first year, of where you're trying to build your business and trying to get regular customers?
Thankfully, we have a little bit of experience with that kind of save for winter mentality as it is. We're right by Lake Michigan, and when we were both production technicians, we weren't salary by any means. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a matter of, if we want to eat this winter, maybe skip a few movie nights and put that in the bank. So that mentality of, even though you're making money now, doesn't mean you'll have some next week or next month, and kind of to avoid just spending it as soon as you get it, has already kind of been a factor for us.
Good.
So I really don't think that was an issue for us.
Mm-hmm.
However, once early spring came around, and by that point 2020 had kind of reared its ugly head at us,
Yeah.
and there was definitely a lot of prayer, a lot of uncertainty on days like that. What are we going to do? And that's kind of when it hit me that, like I said earlier, I tried to do some work for myself a while back around the same time I was working for the new company up here in Northwest Indiana. And I always said, I tell my friends, I tell people I work with, that was my biggest regret was quitting, was getting scared and quitting. And it's not that I was upset where I was, but I wonder what I would have been able to do. And there was always that, if I had to do it again, what would I have done? Would I have given up? Where would I be if I didn't? And I see this as an opportunity to put up or shut up.
Mm.
I think I am fortunate in some ways where I haven't grown up in affluent homes. I've kind of, we're the type of family that's always kind of worked hard for what they have. So this is a familiar territory for me in that regard. So that's why I just don't feel like it's an option to give up anymore. It's we're gonna do this. We're gonna see it through, and we're all gonna be stronger by the end of this. This is no time for uncertainty. So I won't allow myself to, feel that way anymore.
Sure, sure. What helps you to cope with any doubt that might creep up? Because I mean, like I've been in business for 20 years. There's still periods where I have doubt, where I wonder
Sure.
how things are, especially with, like you said, with COVID. I mean, when, March, April, May, those are my prime window cleaning months. That's spring
Mhm.
cleaning in Tucson, because our slow season is, it starts in July and it doesn't end until at the end of September. And
Right.
the money we make now, we live off of, and of course, this was before the PPP, before we even knew that was an option. I mean, I'm like, oh man, what are we going to do? How is the business going to survive? We're losing that valuable time that this is where I'd be banking money, and now I don't have anything coming in. What advice would you give in dealing with that doubt, or wondering how you're going to get through a certain period?
Maybe allow yourself to look at what might actually happen if this does fail. What happens if my business goes under? What happens if I don't make it? And take a look at that, but not to get obsessed in it, not to work yourself into a frenzy about it, but just to say, okay, My business failed. My wife's still here. My daughter's still here. My friends and family are still here.
Yeah.
I've got to find a new line of work, but it'll come eventually if I
Right.
work hard and I look long enough.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to take a step back and literally tell yourself it's not the end of the world.
Hmm.
And, for me, that's been really helpful because, like I said, this is definitely a tumultuous time for everyone.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, as long as we don't throw in the towel, one way or another, we will come out the other side of this.
Absolutely. And that's such good advice. Um, I think a lot of the mistake that a lot of business owners make is investing too much of their identity within the success of the business. And I say quote unquote success, because we all have different ways that we measure success.
Mm-hmm.
But, so many people, if their business isn't making a certain amount of money, it's almost like it's a reflection on them, you
Right.
know? And I think that's a huge mistake, especially when we have unprecedented circumstances like what we've faced these last few months.
Mm-hmm.
That's not anything any of us could control. And
Exactly.
we do our best. We try to adapt. We take advantage of assistance that might be available to us. But ultimately, we can't make the mistake of putting our identity within the results of something that we can't control. You know.
Sure.
And I think that's really good advice that you give on that. Just kind of pushing through. So you're pushing through. You and your wife and your family are kind of circling the wagon, so to speak, and kind of ready to deal with whatever is going to be facing you at this time. What things do you view as kind of your assets to be able to battle forward to get through COVID, but in general, just any difficult time with the business?
Well, a little bit of stubbornness goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there definitely has to be some tenacity, and I definitely have that. I think that one of my assets is the fact that I have you guys. Frankly, I have the groups. I have people to encourage me. I have my family. Um, and I do know the business and I love the business. I really do. To be able to say that I went to somebody's house and saw them sitting in front of their TV watching Blues Clues, to later on in my life going back to that same house and watching that kid packing his bag for freshman year at college, you know, I don't know where else I could be.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps a lot. Just knowing that I am where I am supposed to be. Whether I'm supposed to be a successful franchise, you know, mega window cleaning company or just another bucket Bob doesn't really matter. I'm in the industry that I love. I love serving customers. I love the freedom it entails. You
Awesome.
know,
Yeah.
it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I think that's why we got along so well early on, because we have very similar philosophies when it comes to relationships. And tell some stories that you might have just from your experiences of forming those relationships, and how those relationships might have affected the way that you run your business now.
There was a gentleman who was I'm barely into this and barely getting into residential. Um, he was a NIPSCO lineman, and NIPSCO is our power company out here,
Mm.
your ComEd or whatever you have out there. And he made good money, but he was also a blue collared guy. And I was a young kid, like I said. I'm still figuring out my at this point, and still making sure they're set and very new. And he could so he kind of brought me in, and he played a game of pool with me, and he just kind of got to know me a little bit. That was new for me, was the sign that this doesn't have to be me with a chip on my shoulder and these people who think I'm just the help that are going to be dismissive to me. And it wasn't the case at all. There were plenty of great people there. It made me start to realize, it made me start to look at some customers I had already looked differently. And you start to realize that maybe that person that is, they're you around the house, they're not necessarily convinced you're a but they're unsure about this situation just like you are. We go in people's homes and we go in areas of their homes that sometimes their close family members don't even go to. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? How often is your mom in your master bedroom closet? You know what I mean? And that's kind of the same logic. We have to put we with our work as well. And that's, I think, a huge part of what I like to do is just notice things about people that you might not notice if you were just interested in cleaning the windows.
Hmm.
When I knock on the door to a home, if I see toys in the living room, if I see little kids' toys, if I see the TV playing the kid shows, the first thing I'm going to ask the homeowner is, okay, so I see we've got a little one. Is nap time anytime soon? Is there an area that I need to work on now that, so I'm not disturbing nap time? Because I know as a parent how terrible nap time is interrupted. And now I'm not just a window cleaner to them. I'm
Yeah.
someone who cares,
Yeah.
and it makes all the difference.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let me ask you this. Um, has your attitude towards solving problems for the customer changed since you were an employee to now you're an owner, or has it stayed the same? So,
Absolutely changed. Um, I guess just since there is more personal stake in it, since it's my stamp on everything, I'm more willing to err towards the customer themselves.
mm,
There was a point when I was younger, and I think we all had our young, hot-headed points,
yeah,
where I know I cleaned that window. I know I did it right. I did everything I could, blah, blah, blah. And she's just not what I'm more willing to kind of, like I said, get over myself and,
hmm,
and see the customer's problem from their eyes and fix that as amicably as possible.
awesome,
So,
very cool. Yeah, how would you say your wife has adjusted to the new business?
um, she's less excited than I am, I think, about it. Things
They usually are.
typically, but she loves it. I think she's getting a lot of pride from it as well. She
Yeah,
loves when we get the thank you notes sent to us from customers, or when somebody pops up on Facebook and says you should try these guys. They did a great job.
yeah,
I think she loves that just as much as I do. And, this definitely isn't an industry that I think she fell into and fell in love with like I did.
hmm,
She likes the work and she likes our customers. And I think, it's still scary to her
sure,
beyond that.
yeah.
But I think that'll change.
I think I had a similar situation with my wife as well, and there are some wives I look like Sarah and Feba. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they were just like, boom, team, we're gonna make this work, we're gonna do it, and they both have built the business together. And with my wife, although we definitely both wanted to have a business. We were at a place where that was a goal that we had to be able to have control of our schedule. And of course it was still a long ways before we had our daughter. We had our daughter later in our marriage. We had already been married about 14 years when we had her.
Okay.
But this, I found that uh, the because I was the one who was doing most of the work and most of the office stuff, there definitely was a support. There always has been support, but a lot more uneasiness, in it, and kind
Mhm.
of like, I don't know if this is what we want to do, and
Sure.
it's understandable, So how do you manage that? How do you try to be sensitive to the concerns of your wife when it comes to that aspect of it, and
Don't take it
still
personally.
okay, yeah,
I'm sorry. I didn't
no,
mean
no,
to cut you off there. I
no,
got a little
that's
delay. But no, just don't take it personally. That's the biggest thing that I've noticed is when she's saying, I'm not sure this is what we need to do or whatever. What she's not saying is, I think you're an idiot and a failure. Don't take it that way.
yeah,
That's a big one. She has valid concerns, and I have the same concerns when I'm being honest with myself.
hmm,
So, look at it from that regard. And we try to logic things as much as possible. Meaning, okay, we're a little nervous. Let's look at our last books. Let's look at what we did in June. Wow, we had a pretty good month. Oh, wow, July's booked out okay. And we just kind of try to get our encouragement from, good friends, but also from the numbers. The numbers aren't going to lie to you.
hmm,
And I look at those numbers and say, okay, this is encouraging. We're doing something right. that makes her feel a little better. And sometimes you look at the numbers and say, okay, this is galvanizing now. I need these to be better. So now that's what we're going to work on.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how I try to look at it. I am either being encouraged or challenged.
Yeah, that's again, I think that's really good advice. The worst thing that can happen in a marriage when it comes to the business is it becomes an antagonistic relationship, you know.
Right.
And sometimes, like what you said, if you're, because of we're already having anxiety about the decision that we make and how much is riding on the decision that we make, it's very easy to turn questions or concerns that our spouse might have that are reasonable and come from a good place, but to misread them as if they're attacking us, like as instead of saying like, hey, this is a concern I have, what are we going to do about it together, it's easy for us to say, oh, you made the wrong decision, look at what this look what's happened because you made the wrong decision, you know. And
Exactly.
we have to fight to avoid that. Yeah.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Good points, good points. Very good. So, okay, so now, you know, you guys have, how long have you been in business now? So it's been about a year and a half?
I think it's just been over a year. I
Oh,
actually
just over a
June
year.
1st of 2019 was the first time we actually took some customers on,
Okay.
and did some sub work for Mike Schneider's out in
Hmm.
Illinois. I have to say hello. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Um, he's a squeegee squad there in the New
Yeah.
Lennox area, of
Yeah, he's a
Illinois,
good
and
guy. Yeah, Mike's a good guy.
really is really
Um,
nice guy.
so, so
Yeah, that was a little over a year, just
yeah,
barely.
good. And I think that's where a lot of the rocky stuff is, those first 6 months to a year, you know, where you start building up. It gives you time to build up a little bit of a customer base, and then the next year you're not trying to start from scratch and pull in all these brand new customers. You've got some that you can rely on and build on, you know, as you find the new ones. So that's really good.
Absolutely.
So good. Well, it sounds like you're on the right you're on the right pace, and you guys are going to be going up from here on out. You know, um, what advice would you give to, now that you're a year out? And because, you know, I was a year out at one time, but that was a long time ago. You're fresh year out. What
The
advice
scars are
would
still new. Uh,
Yes. What advice would you give now to a person who is today? They're like, you know what? I'm ready to go on my own. I think I'm ready to start my own business. What advice would you give?
um, Definitely make sure you have a knowledge base, whether that's, you're in these groups and you're absorbing everything you can like a sponge, whether you've gotten your experience like I did through one or multiple companies, or whether you are studying up on YouTube and watching Steve O and Luke and guys like that. Have some knowledge so that way you can have some confidence when you're making your sales. When you make your first couple of sales, that kind of boosts the confidence even more, and you can go from there. Be diligent. Don't get discouraged because you're going to hear some no's. You're going to have some bad days. You're going to underbid that job no matter how well you think you priced it, and you're going to hate your life for the next 8, 9 hours while you're working on that job, but you'll get through it, and tomorrow's another day. Um, don't don't have regrets to the point where you think you need to shut down because you've proven yourself incapable. What you've done is you've taught yourself a lesson. Some lessons are a lot more painful than others,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And those painful lessons can be the most valuable.
Yeah.
So, if I were new, I would definitely soak up the information in these groups. And even though I am not new, that's what I'm doing in these groups. I have plenty of questions about things. That's what's great about these groups. But also take it with a grain of salt. Um, like you and Kevin kind of touched on as far as cleaning techniques versus the desert and Michigan, the same kind of marketing logic or branding approach that works in Upper West Manhattan is not going to work here in Farmtown, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So, definitely have some advice, and really you're going to have some guts, and you're going to have to play around with what you've learned to see what sticks. And it's not going to happen overnight.
Cool, man. Good advice. Good advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the group and listeners as to things that made a difference in your life as a window cleaner and now as a business owner?
Um, well, honestly, I want to just say I'm grateful that I've met everyone in ITF. It's been a wonderful experience. You guys challenged me to take that next step to be a better representation of our industry, not just a good window cleaner, not just, a successful business, but what it means to be an entrepreneur and to be connected to the communities you serve. I
Yeah.
think you guys are great examples. I really appreciate that. Honestly, what I would say to everyone is get out there, have fun. Your competition's not your enemy. They might be your best friend if you actually stop and talk to them. And there's a lot of preconceived notions about this industry that I think groups like this are kind of changing. We are all consummate professionals.
Yeah.
Even the guys like me who just want to be a solo guy, we can give you the same professional service as that guy with 12 trucks. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of trying. It's just a matter of the effort.
Yeah.
Put it out there, and good things can happen.
Awesome. Yeah. You know, just kind of something I wanted to touch on. You were when we first started the group. This is Craig's vision. And we're sad that Craig isn't a part of the group anymore. And he made his own decisions on that. And we certainly, as the rest of the mods, respected his decision. We still do. We still like Craig.
Mhm.
And have contact with them, of course. And he checks in with us every once in a while, see how the group's going. So he's still thinking of us. But
Awesome.
the vision of the group has always been one of, we always said philanthropy, education, and safety,
Mhm.
and that has always been. And you weren't one of the first mods, but we did pull you in pretty early. And so, and I don't know if everybody appreciates how much work went in those first months to get the group going as to where it is now and on its path. Because at this point now, I mean, we definitely still do a lot of work as mods. We do, but
Sure.
it's like it's a train now already in a direction.
Sure.
And it's going, and the group goes, and the group moves in that, and it just naturally pulls in people who support those ideals, who want positivity, who want to have a professional discussion without worrying about people chewing them out, or calling them names, or trolls coming in and disrupting conversations. And hey, it's going to happen in places, but we've worked really hard to do it. And I think that people who are in the group and who are active have bought into it. They bought into that attitude, and you were a part of that. And even though you're not a mod now, I want to make sure that you and also everybody else know that you had a hand in building that culture of this group. And so we're like, we've told you a million times, man, we're just keeping the seat warm for you. Whenever you feel like you're ready to come back, we're ready to have your help again. We're not trying to force you, to do anything that you're not ready to do. We know you got your hands full keeping your business, but we just want to make sure you understand that we still value your input in the group, and we appreciated all the hard work that you've done in the past to get it started to where it is now. So
I appreciate that, Gabe. That means a
yeah.
lot. And I remember those early texts when there was only, I think there were 12 total members in the group, those first couple of days. And then, the way things ended up happening to where we're all kind of just in the background, like, okay, what do we do now? Where do we take this? I just remember the excitement and the passion that was displayed in that, hey, we can help people. We can raise money for injured window cleaners. And just the excitement that was there. And
Hmm.
that's what kind of really drew me in and sold me to it. And I agree. I think people when they see a little bit of that, whether it's just that they catch a post or two, it's easy to buy into a sale like that. And I think there's definitely a respect the room mentality.
Hmm.
That's why I think things in ITF go as smoothly as they do, is because people know that there's a place where we can have different kinds of conversations at other groups. This is kind of like our library. We want to keep it room. We want to keep it clean for the other guests, and
Hmm.
I feel like that's I love that ITF is able to have that kind of environment for people that
Yeah.
might not ask a question elsewhere because they're afraid of the response that they'd get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, you touched on a really important point in what you said previous, in that we have an opportunity to change the image of our industry.
Hmm.
And especially with a group like ITF that has such a wide outreach, and especially with our association with IWCA, with Michael Draper's, window cleaner safety, and all the stuff that he's done with Sean Gavin and Tucker, and we've got so many people who are a part, who are players in the industry, there's really two roles you can play in ITF. You can either come into ITF and just listen and get the education and listen to the pointers and ask a question once in a while, or you can actually participate. And if you participate and are active and try to help others, man, you are at the forefront of our industry, nationwide. And the connections that you can make is just pretty amazing.
Really
And
is.
it's just something that I think it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity that everybody in ITF can take advantage of. It doesn't mean that we're like super special, or movers and shakers, and making hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not what it's about, but it's just the opportunity to get in front of the people who make decisions that do affect a lot of our lives. And
I think it's really neat. Yeah.
yeah,
How many carpenters do you know have the maker of Snap-on on their private messages on
yeah,
Facebook? It's
exactly.
really cool, and I think that once again speaks to the passion that most of the people in ITF have. They want to be there. They
Yeah,
want to be in front of those people that make the decisions. They want to be a positive change and effect in the industry, and
yeah.
that's just really cool to see.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And again, just want to thank you so much for being a part of that in those early days. And just, hey, give us a knock on the door when you're ready to come back. All right, we'll take you right back in.
Kevin's already threatened me with violence to come back. I promise by the end of summer, I told him, no, I've got some, we'll talk about that in another point, but, I think I'm at a point where I've kind of checked my list off and I'm ready to kind of spread my focus a little bit. So
Awesome.
you'll be hearing from me whether you like it or not.
Hey, we will always like it, man. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for all your contributions you do to ITF, and thanks a lot for just making the time for this podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
You too. Take care, bud.